Streaming live via the internet. Welcome to ISP Radio, your weekly source for ISP-related news, events, and interviews with industry experts. If you deliver internet via fiber optic, wireless, coax, or any other way, you're in the right place. Chat live with us weekly via ispradio.com every Wednesday at 11 a.m. Central Time. And now a brief word from our sponsors. Link Technologies, providing ISP consulting, support, and hardware for wireless ISPs. TowerCoverage.com, providing online RF coverage maps. And now your host for ISP Radio, Steve Grabiel and Dennis Burgess.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of ISP Radio. Steve is going to be out today, so I get to be the only host of the show. We kind of moved back our show today. We had some inclement weather, and it was actually pretty severe here in St. Louis on, this past Wednesday. So because of that, we didn't want to have any power or internet disruptions disrupt our show. So guess what? We decided to move it to Wednesday, as most people move things anyway, so it shouldn't be a big deal. And we have lots of people that sit there and listen to the show online after the fact, of course. So today we're going to have Patrick Leary with Bicells. We're going to be talking about some of their trials. We had them on, Patrick, how long ago was that? Maybe 2-3 months?
Oh, yeah, I think it was back in late February.
Yeah, it's been a little while, and we had you on. We got some great information, and the big thing with Bicells is you guys were doing your LTE trials. You were getting all your trial gear out. If I remember correctly, most of it was already delivered. Some of it was deployed, some of it wasn't back then. But now we are in that second phase. The trials are coming in, all the information, the data, all that kind of good stuff is coming in, which is always a really good thing for our listeners. And we're going to get to learn about this gear again and to see how the trial has been working out for all of those users. So, Patrick, to get started here, can you tell us a little bit about the gear itself? Because obviously some of these people may have not, or some of our listeners may have not been to or listened to the last show. Tell us what your gear is, what it's all about. Obviously it's LTE, etc., but tell us what it's about to at least give us a little recap of that.
Sure, and if you don't mind, let me go back a little bit. When we last talked, gear actually hadn't been delivered. There was a few pieces of what we called Wave 1 non-production equipment in the hands of a couple folks. But what's out there now, and has finally been mostly delivered, is what we call our Wave 2 trials. And there's about 40 or so, actually I think it's 54 operators who have equipment and in various stages of deployment. Some have yet to deploy it. A number of them have. But this is of our the stuff coming off the production line, in particular the base stations. So what we do have, again, as you mentioned, we are a fixed LTE centric provider, and our gear currently supports bands in LTE vernacular. They call these things, they number the bands. Bands 40 and 41 refer to 2.3 and 2.5. We have our FCC certification in for our 10-watt 2.5 base stations. And we also have our FCC certification in for our band 42 and 43. And band 43 refers to the existing NN band, which is 3.65 to 3.7 band. And then the other band, band 42, refers to the new CBRS band. And any gear that's certified now under the old Part 90 rules for band 43 has to be able to convert and support Part 96, the CBRS rules that are up and coming. We make base stations, we make several models of CPE to include there's an indoor CPE, which is almost FCC certified. There is an 11 dBi CPE that is almost FCC certified. And then there is the 19.5 dBi integrated panel, which does have its FCC cert in. And those certs are actually relatively recently relatively recent, but we are glad they are finally in.
Gotcha. So we have certified gear, and this is all. So this is I want to make sure you said that 365 gear,
Correct.
and it is already certified, or will be
Correct.
certified for the new open band when that comes up.
It is already certified under the Part 96 rules. The certification process for the CBRS band, although the last time I met the FCC, they said they're ready to provide certification for that, but industry isn't quite ready with the work being done on the SAS by the Wireless Innovation Forum, aka WinForm. But our gear is ready for that as well, and we are working with a couple of the SAS vendors to include Spectrum Bridge, Federated Wireless, and those sorts. And we also have some activity with Google as well.
Gotcha. So we're definitely moving forward, or you're definitely moving forward, and we got some certifications already out of the way, which is always a really, really good thing. So what is the marketing hype behind LTE, first off, especially in the 365? And then let's go back to what does the marketing document say? What are we expecting? What is customers, or what should potential customers expect to see out of all this wonderful brand new gear that you guys are happening before we get to our wonderful trial stuff?
Well, the marketing hype behind LTE, I think, principally revolves around an assumption by many of us, and I have a couple vendor competitors, but I would say peer vendors who also believe this as well, that LTE ultimately will take over the fixed wireless space, simply because the global mass that's behind the standard, simply because the CBRS band is kind of globally harmonized with what the rest of the world has been able to do for many, many years. And it's already taken over all of voice, and it's just technology that's in its beginning side of its R&D. Something like $1 billion a year goes into LTE R&D, so it's got a long life, and everything is backward compatible. And as the standard propagates, and as in particular end devices become increasingly prevalent, the infrastructure that supports those end devices will have to be LTE, or else you won't be able to play in that space. For WISPs, frankly, I'm one that believes people. There are some that are really interested in jumping on the LTE bandwagon, but I think principally the interest from a WISP standpoint, and we fully understand this, as does my peer vendor in the space, is the non-line of sight capabilities that we believe LTE provides. The reason it does that is because simply just from the start, because it is a more advanced technology, just a base sensitivity per modulation, LTE has about a 7 to 8 dB advantage on a per modulation basis. And as we all know, 7 to 8 dB is a very significant difference in your ability to penetrate those very difficult foliage obstacles that most of our friends out there in the WISP space have to deal with.
Excellent. Well, without further ado, I think everybody's anxious to see what kind of trials have been going on, see some raw data, hopefully.
Sure.
Tell us what are these operators doing? How many are there? What is their expectations, and how has the trials been going?
Okay. Again, it's a closed trial, and there's roughly, I think, about 54 or so operators involved. They paid to play, so they've got skin in the game for sure. And one of the requirements of the trial is that they provide pictures, at least 4 pictures. One of the pictures being from basically the ground up to the mounting location for the base station. The other, we're asking people to take a shot at the base station height out towards the azimuth of the antenna. And then the other 2 pictures is one of a picture forward looking at the CPE, whether it's a temp mount or a permanent mount, and the other being from the CPE to the tower. because we all have different understandings and different interpretations of non-line of sight. And generally, when we talk about it from a visual non-line of sight, not really from an RF line of sight, although most people, I think, understand the Fresnel zone and all that sort of thing. Really, we're talking about visual line of sight through the obstructions that hamper connection. These operators are spread throughout North America. There is a good number in Canada, but they range in topography everywhere from deep Alaska to the Sierras, to the desert, to the Gulf states, to Appalachia, certainly all over the Midwest, even the Northeast. So we really have what we think a representation of every possible terrain that anyone could encounter. Now, this was a little nerve-wracking for us because, frankly, this production gear, we had not seen it in action ourselves, me and my colleagues here at Bicells. So trepidation isn't maybe the right word, but maybe nervous anticipation as to how this stuff would perform. And, I've participated in a trial process before. I know they can tend to be bloody because there's going to be things that come up, and it's all how the organization deals with them. I'm very happy to report that, by and large, the performance that we're getting, in particular the non-line of sight performance, is exceptional, even better than, frankly, I had expected, but maybe equaling what I was hoping for. I think we've done a lot of things that are right. In particular, the CPE integrating a 19.5 dBi antenna into that CPE, I think, has really helped push the signal a little bit. But we are starting to get some data and some pictures, and I've got a couple here that I can show. And again, all these pictures that we get, one of our things is we try to be really transparent, really open. So even though our operators are under NDA, I'm open. When they ask, can I share this information? I absolutely, share the good, share the bad. The bad gets out there anyway. This is it's not a small industry, but it's a very niche industry, and most of us know each other, and word gets around fast. So there's nothing that, it doesn't do any good to try to hide issues. Everyone has issues. It's all how you respond to them. So here's some of the pictures we do have. This first one I have posted, and I believe this guy is in, and I apologize, but I don't have these labeled, but this I think is in part of Texas or Arizona. Sorry, I should know. Obviously, this doesn't look like a particularly difficult environment from a non-line of sight perspective for those of us who are maybe East Coasters or deal with terrain like Arkansas, whatever. But places like this still do encounter some problems. So you've got your GPS here, which comes with the base station, by the way. It's not a separate line item. It's not a separate price. And this is the 1 watt base station. There's a handle on it. Now, we've changed the mounting on this. One of the things I've been really pleased to see is the speed at which the folks back east are making adaptations based on mass consensus of the trial operators. And one of the complaints was early on we had band clamps. Now, apparently some vendors use band clamps, but I don't like them. Not that they're not strong enough, but they're extraordinarily awkward to work with. It's definitely a two-hand operation. They're a little squirrely, and it's really difficult, frankly, to trust them. So we had them redesign the mount, so now we have a U-bolt mount that ships with every base station. Another thing, another ding was how the GPS is mounted, so now we have a new interesting swivel mount. And we post all these new designs, the mechanical schematics we posted online on our Facebook, on our Bicells Technologies Facebook account. These pictures I'm showing here, we post there, and people are sharing some of the information. This is another one. There are some areas of this that get a little more challenging. This one I know is Nebraska. I was out there. And again, in some of these areas you can see your dog running away for 2 days, as I like to say. But there were some challenging areas inside town which is looking back towards the center picture. You can see the town, and you can see some of the thick trees wrapped around the homes. But in every case, they're getting really exceptional performance, and in most cases, they're getting better performance than one of my principal competitors, which is fantastic news because that's well-performing gear. And frankly, that was the benchmark that we were aiming for, although at least a 1/3 or less of the price point. This just shows some of the connections. We also, in the beginning, from the phase 1 to phase 2, we had them adopt and adapt the power connection. Now we use a nice Amphenol power connection. It's very robust. It's nice. We are getting some dings about how close the antenna, the RF ports are, and that does make it tough to weather seal. The weather seal, by the way, comes with the base station, as do all the inline surge suppressors, both for the RF ports and for the GPS ports. That's all part in package with the base station. We even have mastic and electrical tape and all that, even in the packaging. This is another shot. I think this is a different location. But I've got one here that shows some data here. Let's look at that. Okay, this one's getting a little more interesting. I believe this one is in rural south central South Carolina. Now, for those who aren't familiar with the terrain, one of the reasons why this is so extraordinarily tough is because there's no ridge lines that you can mount to get over the trees. So you really just have to have elevation. And if you don't have elevation, in this case, it's you can see it's on the deck of a water tower. You're really limited with what you can do with most current technology because you're still battling a fair amount of trees. So this particular customer did compile some data. That's the water tower it's mounted on. You can see it's pretty typical, probably like a 91-foot deck height or something like that. We're all familiar with this kind of thing. And this is one of the shots on the right of the CPE going back to the tower. Sorry, my daughter walked in and I'm asking her to walk very quietly. And here's one with data. So this is what they provided. This is unfiltered, unedited. We didn't add data. We did not take away any data. And for example, let's go back here.
Back one there. There we go. Almost.
Let's try this again. Sorry about that.
That's okay. As long as we get the data, that's what's really important. Because we do have a couple questions, but we'll let you present the data.
What are you back and seeing?
Go ahead and switch your display back around. Yeah, there you go.
All right. Okay. So I won't touch the screen. That was my problem.
Touch screens. Gotta love them, right?
I love my yoga, but it does get squirrely like that. So this particular operator has some competitive equipment that they're also testing in trial. And what I was really kind of astonished to see is the comparison of the downlink and uplink for some of these locations. And keep in mind, the competitive trial was installed in March before the tree coverage, the foliation was at its peak. And the Bicells was installed only about 2.5 weeks ago or so, maybe 3 weeks ago. So really, peak foliage. And yet you can see the comparisons were exactly from the same CPE locations. The only distinction was that the Bicells was on a post at ground level, on a pole that they raised up a little bit, not optimized in terms of its fix, and certainly not permanently mounted, whereas the competitive CPE is mounted at a permanent location onto the structure, whether it's the home or in this case the town hall or whatever it is. So when you look at the uplink versus downlink competitively, frankly, I was kind of astonished to see this data. And this is the kind of thing that we're continually seeing. We're hearing that whereas they might, on a competitive CINR, they may get about 29, and where ours might be somewhere around a 23 for the same link. Frankly, I'm not sure what all the reasons for all this. I do know the 19.5 CPE is probably contributing to some of this. I also know the antenna we're using in that CPE is a really good, high quality, laser etched piece of metal in there. It's not kind of the old regular individual elements. It's a pretty nice unit. And in fact, I cracked it open in front of a customer, and we have a roadshow coming up in Ashburn, Virginia, that's full. And during that one, we're going to actually do on video. We're going to unbox a CPE and show what comes with it, but we're also going to crack open the CPE and show people what it looks like inside, because I think how it's built is contributing to our success here.
Oh,
so
you're not going to do that here, huh? need to
there
get
is
a little camera
Rick
operator.
Harnish did make an unboxed video, and it is on, and so did Matt Hops made one too. And he's got an unboxed video on the base station, which you can see on our Facebook page, which really goes through. And I could actually pull that up if you wanted. It's kind of interesting, but it's maybe a little bit long for you or not. Or
Gotcha. Well, we'll let them find out. So just to reiterate, I think most people will be able to see this if they're in full screen watching. I'm just going to kind of pick out a couple of these just so everybody, if you're not looking at it, you can actually see or hear the data. So I'm going to pick one of them. The competitor had a RSRP of between neg 109 to neg 112, and the Bicells had a neg 116, so not as good, but keep in mind it's a ground-mounted on a pole CPE. The competitor downlink was about 3.1 meg with an uplink of 0.1 meg. The Bicells downlink was, on that line, if I actually look at it, is 14.2 down and 0.7 up. So definitely a lot more downstream, even though you have a little less RSRP.
well, you can see that's consistent on there, and which is very interesting to us. I'm not sure if the reading of the RSRP, either at ours or theirs, is 100% accurate. I'm not sure, but the proof is in the downlink and the uplink. So in most cases, it seems like maybe our RSRP is a little worse. And oh, by the way, for those that don't understand what that means, in LTE they use that, and that's basically a measurement of the noise at a per frame basis. It's a more accurate reading, and basically, if you want to understand that from an RSSI standpoint, you subtract 30, and keep in mind these are negative numbers. So a negative like 110 RSRP is really, in terms of RSSI, is equivalent to about a minus 80. So you understand what you're looking at, and if you do that math, you'll know that most of these, from an RSSI standpoint, you wouldn't even bother trying to connect, because it would be well under minus 80, which in a lot of gear is a no-go, whereas an LTE, that's an incredibly solid connection, just simply because in minus 80 you're still in QAM 64. Although not at the highest QAM 64 modulation, you are still in QAM 64. So you get a really good connection.
Gotcha. So on these particular tests, how was the uplink and downlink measured?
Don't know exactly. I'm sure this is the operator's data. I'm sure they used whatever common methodologies there are. I don't know that exact answer for you.
Okay. So I'm going to go through a couple of these questions. We do have a number of people online, and
Okay.
They're just asking some questions. Some of these are pretty easy. Some of these are a little bit more complicated. I know you just explained the RSRP, which is very, very important, because that was actually a question that came up on the chat window on our site. So that is a really good answer. 30 dB difference roughly. Let's see here. What one person asks, I'm just going to try to read this verbatim. I haven't seen any metrics for distances over 1 mile. Why is that, and what is the expected range of 3.65 LTE?
Partly that's gear dependent. The standard is supposed to say 30 kilometers. I think is 30 kilometers line of sight. You're supposed to get full modulation out of the radio. Now every gear is going to be a little bit different. I don't frankly know what our limit is yet, because the data is just coming in. I've seen things as far as 7 miles. For example, Amarillo Wireless, and I talked to Matt there yesterday, told me he did some testing out that far and was still getting good performance, which was great to hear, because I had understood there might be some limitations on our side that they were working on of a distance limitation that was somewhere around 11 kilometer under the current gear, but that was a software issue. So there has been a good bit of data that we've seen. Frankly, most of it has been short, 3 miles and under. But I'm not controlling the distance range at which people test. So everyone has their own range. We will be collecting all this data, and one of the data points. In fact, we've created an app that the trial operators are supposed to have. I'm hopeful that we get it out to them today, that we've made from scratch, and one of the fields that they populate addresses that question. So makes them answer the range question, so that we can get good comparative data. The goal for us on this trial was to have a lot of repeatable tests and to be able to compile tons of data points on specific tests. Yes, that was lightning behind me. I do live in Florida, and it is after 12 in the summertime, so hey. But it is what it is in terms of the range data I do have. As soon as we have more, you can count on it being posted. We'll upload it right to Facebook, and every Friday we also share an email with every trial operator without fail every Friday, and we've done that for a couple of months. So we're trying to be very open and communicative with everything.
Excellent. So again, going down this list, are we running DC power, and what about SFP ports?
Yeah, 48 volt DC. No, and I don't know if that's Mike, but no SFP in this current version.
Okay.
It is certainly a gap, and we wanted it. We didn't get it on this version. I'm hopeful that any subsequent version will have to have it. It's one of those ones that we're pretty much demanding. I don't think it's a no-go. For some, it may be. So that means it's problematic for me. And there are third-party ways to solve it, but none of those are elegant. I want it built in, and hopefully next version will have it. This one does not.
Excellent. On the 48 volt DC, what is the wattage on the base station?
I'm told the wattage is a little bit under 80 watts.
A little bit under 80 watts. Okay. Keep going down here, just looking at our questions.
And I can pull up pictures of the gear too if you want.
Memory, processor memory, does the AP and CPE have? I don't know. Yeah.
Well, the deeper you go into your questions, folks, the dumber I get, or the more obvious you see my technical gaps. I don't know that, actually. I don't have that answer. I can try to find it and post it, so I'll jot myself a note on that.
There you go. So the last question I have on here is, I think probably something that a lot of people are probably waiting for, is when is Bicells going to disclose pricing for base stations and CPEs?
Oh, we've done that many times, and I'll do it again here. So, and I'll do it from both MSRP and from expectation of street price. So first, know that we've got 3 primary distributors signed today. There are a few more coming, but the first is Wave, W-A-V, which I think most folks know, great guys. The second is Double Radius. If you don't know them, you've not been around very long, another very good company. And the third is ISP Supplies down in College Station. also terrific guys and have their own skill sets. So those are my three primary distributors today. On the 1 watt base station, the 365 base station under the Part 96 rules, the price for that on the MSRP is $37.99. You can expect a street price of around $3,000. And again, if you go on our Bicells Technologies Facebook page, you can go down in that feed and you'll see an unbox and you'll see exactly what that comes with. But I can tell you offhand, it comes with the base station, it comes with the GPS antenna, it comes with all the surge arresters, it comes with jumper cables, mastic, stuff like that. So it's pretty comprehensive. There's not a lot of additional stuff that you need to buy other than the power cabling and the antenna itself, and which KP has been very good. They're supplying most of the trial antennas, although I see under this one the customer is using Alpha. I can't, I don't define what antenna they use, although we can make some recommendations, and we don't make our own yet. And for the 10 watt base stations, which is 2.5, the list price on those, I believe, is $7,999 is the list. Not sure what street pricing will be on that because they're not on the street yet, although there's about 20 coming in country for some 2.5 trials. For the CPE, for the 19.5 dBi integrated panel, that one lists for $224. You should be able to get all day, every day, right around $200, even in onesie twosie kind of quantity. So that's pretty darn good. The 11 dBi has a list of $199. So a street price maybe in the $159-ish area, something like that, which is also very good. The indoor CPE will have a street price. Will have a that's the list price on that, I believe, is $149, and street price probably $105-ish, something like that. And that's a very limited use, but we are certifying that, and we will make that available. We went to the FCC and we're very careful in getting confirmation of the kind of power we could push out of that particular unit, which is 800 milliwatts in a 20 megahertz channel. But any event, so that's the pricing for the gear.
Excellent, excellent. So we have pricing for those of you that have not seen that. Obviously, it's out, and we have all that. 2 more questions. What is the total bandwidth at the access point, and how many CPEs?
Okay. The total bandwidth at the access point on a gross basis, and this is pretty much a standard from Release 9 LTE, it's about 110 megabits. In reality, best case, you're probably looking about 85, although I've seen as high as 91 megabits of available capacity. In terms of numbers of CPEs, this is interesting because there was initially what we thought would be a hard limit of 96 connections with substantially less than that. I think it was 32 or something like that, could be active at any single nanosecond. But I understand that's been changed, and so that's up to 96 as well now. So really, I think most of our recommendations will be around the 50, 60 CPE on one base station is where we think you should really top out at least in this version. Truth is, we haven't seen it scaling, so some of the operators have a scenario where they have one base station and 25 CPE. So we should be able to see pretty soon how the gear performs under weight, so to speak. And again, when we have the data, we'll post it. So for good or bad, we'll post it.
So definitely, if you want more information, go ahead and hit the Bicells Facebook page. It sounds like that's probably probably one of the best ways to get information.
For the general public, we do have some other lists, and if people want to get on our specific mailing list, which I try not to hit that too often, but when there's something meaningful to push out, I do push it out. So it's maybe a couple times a month. You can hit me with an email at patrick.leary@bicells.com, and I can make sure you're subscribed to that. But we are really endeavoring to be the most transparent vendor in this space has ever seen. And those guys that are participating in the trials, I asked that on Facebook the other day. I said, how do you think we're doing from a transparency and communications basis, from 1 to 10, 10 being best? And I only got 2 answers on it, but those 2 were 9s, which I think is pretty good. And we are having our first trial operator mass webinar a week from today, where we invite all of them in to share information among themselves and to ask them how we're doing, what we could do better, that sort of thing. We've also, again, been really responsive on making the changes that, again, were kind of consensus criticisms. And I'll tell you a little story. One change is happening, and I didn't want it to happen this fast. And this is my fault. I think I poorly communicated this to our colleagues back east. But for example, one of the biggest dings on the CPE, and it's a substantial ding, and it's the one I dinged myself when they showed me the mock-up at WISP America, was the alignment lights are under a screwed panel, and there's like 4, I think it's like 5 or 6 screws, and they're non-captive screws. You remove that thing to add the SIM card into a line. That's a no-go. Can't do that. No one wants to have non-captive screws in a little panel that they got to take off just to see the darn lights. So we said they had to fix that, but we wanted them to wait until all the trial CPE was shipped. Again, it's a fixed trial, so we knew the numbers, and it's a little over, somewhere around 1,100 CPE that we wanted them to produce using their existing supply chain stuff that they had to build it as it was. Well, I guess we complained too much, because they went ahead and stopped production and are making that change now and retooling the line so that the lights can be seen on the exterior, and we can change how the SIM slots in. So that's problematic for me, because not everyone on the trial will get all their CPE as fast as they should have, and it means I can't officially kick off the trial for some of the operators that don't have all their gear, because it's a 60-day trial once they have all their gear, and if they don't have it, then the clock doesn't tick. And if the clock's not ticking, I can't invoice once the trial is complete. So our bad, we own it, I own it, but the good side is that they're really responsive in making changes based on market feedback, and that's something, the speed at which they're doing it, I've never seen, and I'm really encouraged by that, and really pleased at how supportive and responsive the team has been.
So another question that we got was, are these CPEs, the CPEs in question, they're not a generic CPE, these are actually Bicells manufactured CPEs?
Correct. Now, we all use contract manufacturers, but they are our CPE. You can't buy them through any other company, right? It's not like Green Packet or a Gemtech, making them and then they sell a version of the same that's their own. These are ours, made under contract for us, explicitly our design, and you won't see them anywhere else, at least unless we OEM them to someone or something.
Okay.
So they are ours.
Awesome.
And by the way, that 19.5, that was one of the other things I asked them to do, because they were only going to have an 11. I said, whoa. We need more than 11 dBi.
Yeah, it's a little low.
Box.
Yeah. All right. And as far as the LTE gear goes, for those of you that have used it, usually you have a number of other components. You have your base stations, what they call eNode Bs. You have your CPEs, but then you also have what we call an EPC or a core, an LTE core of some type.
Correct.
Now, in this particular product, are you embedding the core into the eNode B, the base station, or is this you still will need a core device or an LTE EPC to run?
So here we are trying to take a very WISP-friendly approach, and again, especially from a value and cost standpoint, trying to keep the barriers to entry as incredibly low as we can for this gear. And the LTE Core, generally, normally, historically, is exceptionally expensive, especially the cores that come from companies whose products are based for mobile. It's not unusual to have a core over seven figures, or excuse me, into seven figures and deep into six. My competitor, I think, did a very good job of breaking that model and coming up with a different methodology where they have, I think, a very well-priced starter core system. What we've done is a little bit different. So our primary model is a cloud-based core, and we've done this for two reasons. One, the LTE industry is moving to something called NFV, Network Functions Virtualized, where they separate out the data plane from the control plane. And they do this because otherwise all your data has to run through the EPC location, which injects latency and also makes it a problem for backhaul. If you drop a packet or so, LTE is very sensitive on that and can be problematic. So by separating these out, we don't experience these problems because the control plane stuff is the only thing that goes out. So our cloud-based EPC, as soon as you power this stuff up and connect it to the internet, it connects to the cloud automatically. This is literally plug and play stuff, and I mean literally plug and play. You can install this and run it without changing a single setting once you power up, which is another thing that's very astonishing because LTE is inherently very complicated. The book of the LTE stack is thousands of pages of rules. So they've really made this almost as easy as Wi-Fi, which is actually one of the mottos of our CEO. So in the cloud-based core model, it connects, and that's really all there is to it. You don't have to do anything. We just have to register the SIMs, which should be done in most cases before you even see your CPE. But the price model for that is not paying up front, but simply a per subscriber per month charge of $1 per subscriber per month for the cloud, and that also gets you the management and ultimately the billing part, right? So that's kind of all inclusive. So it's very, very low barrier entry, but there is also an option for having your own hosted core, which some will want, and that's a higher priced option. And that price we're still kind of debating on what that number should be. Not nearly as low because cores are expensive, and if you're giving kind of your software for something like that, it's not necessarily cheap. And then also you can use competitive cores. We are very standards focused. So if you have an existing LTE core, much of the testing that's been done so far has shown the ability of our CPE to connect to competitive base stations, the ability of our CPE to work with competitive cores.
So you guys are going to be making a EPC core product at some point in time that will be selling, but you're
not hardware. I don't envision that we'll sell hardware, but we'll give you server specs. You have to have a pretty beefy, robust server to run an LTE core. So it's probably just software.
Software at some point in time, but right now you're focusing the model into the cloud product at this point in time.
Yep, and then just what happens is that cloud, we used Microsoft Azure. Nothing goes outside of North America. There is no data. There is no control. Anything that crosses the shores, contrary to I think some of the rumors, it's all local, and all local using Microsoft Azure, which is a pretty reliable platform.
Excellent. So is there, with all these trials, was about 4 months ago or so, you were just getting the trial started, and now
less than that.
Okay.
I wish it was 4 months ago, but because we told them to retool for a couple things in particular.
Gotcha.
The power interface, the power connection before was one you had to solder on. Some guys like that, but I think in general, you don't want to be at 300 feet soldering power wire. So that required some retooling, and that delayed the initial delivery of trial stuff. So, no, the truth is these guys haven't had it that long. I'd say most of them got it in around the beginning of June, early June.
So a month ago.
Yeah.
Okay. So what is, based on these trials, obviously you haven't got all of them done yet, what is the expected, or do you have an expected availability date for general
Very
users?
good question. So I sent a message to our distributors earlier this week that based on the feedback of that we have initially on performance, in particular of the hardware, the software is always an ongoing process, but because the hardware seems so solid, we've given the go-ahead to corporate to go ahead and commercially produce the base stations and the CPE, especially the CPE once they get that alignment light thing nailed down. So they're going into commercial production of the base stations already. And I've told the distributors that the orders that they have pending, and we have a couple million in pending orders, that we'll begin to ship those as soon as they come off the line. So the orders can be placed now into our distributors, and they should have gear in the not too distant future because we've pulled the trigger on commercial production for that equipment.
Excellent. So you said I maybe I missed it. An actual expected date to the distributors in the U.S.
I don't know exactly what that date will be, but I've told them to go on production. So we actually have a big global management call with me and the rest of the executive team on Monday. So I'll have a better idea of those firm dates, when that stuff should start rolling off the line.
You'll probably put that on the Facebook page?
I'll share it, man.
There you go. So
I'll share it when we expect distributors to start receiving their base stations.
Gotcha. So the big thing...
They are taking orders now. I can tell you they are taking orders, and some of them are starting to get a lot of calls.
Okay. So we're looking at the general release. The manufacturing process has started. That does not mean that we have them yet, but the manufacturing process has started, which means once they get enough to palletize, containerize, and ship, they're going to start coming over. Is it going to be one big batch, or are you going to trickle them in?
We're going to take the hit on shipping, and we're going to get the first big batches out by air. That's my goal.
Okay. So
right. So the way we've distributed, the way we've organized our distribution contracts, and again, we did that with complete consultation with key distributors. So our distribution program is almost 100% defined by what the distributors told us were the best things to have in there. And one of the things we do is we take responsibility, at least for larger orders, for all shipping and FOB destination. So our distributors don't have to worry about import-export issues, at least into the U.S. So we take care of all shipping. It'll just arrive at their doorstep. So, certainly inside of August, people should start. Distributors should start to see their base stations in early August, I'm hoping.
Excellent. All righty. Well, I'm going to go through all those questions here real quick. I think everything that was asked on our online chat at ispradio.com was pretty much answered. If there is not, I guess I'll make one last call for any final questions. Go ahead and type it in that chat window, because it is very, very important to us. We want to make sure you guys get that data and have any of your questions answered. But it really sounds like the best way that if you want to keep up with Bicells is to visit and like their Facebook page. That sounds like their primary method of getting information out. So it's really, really important that you probably do that as well. Before we, again, we asked for those last questions, but before we get going, is there any other words you want to say, how to contact, where to buy, all that kind of good stuff?
Yeah. So I think most people, or a great many of you, know Rick Harnish. He's our director of WISP Markets for obvious reasons, and we've put Rick on the road, Rick's road trip, and he's been video blogging as well, and a lot of those are also online. So he's got some great video, including at test sites and things like that. So rick.harnish at bicells.com, which is BAICELLS.com. he's really the primary go-to for WISPs. Many of you also may know, especially if you're involved in the channel, you may know Boone Senecum, who used to be one of the top reps over at Double Radius. He's my VP of sales, and he's easy to find, and he's incredibly responsive. And both these gentlemen are as committed to the WISP industry as I am. So we tried to assemble a team of people that really understand the space, care a lot about the space, and I mean a lot. And my other key executive partner in this is Jesse Raish. And Jesse is up in Wisconsin, and he's my VP of engineering and ops. Incredibly talented, far too talented for his age, frankly. And he's doing a great job supporting everyone in the trials. Jesse was also a WISP. Rick was also a WISP. So people on my team get it. They understand you. They understand what you're trying to accomplish, and we all understand why you're doing it, and have respect for the things that you do. Because if you don't exist, there's millions of people out there and millions of communities thousands of communities that would simply die if the WISPs weren't there to provide broadband. This is the lifeblood of the modern economy, and WISPs play an absolutely essential role in rescuing and keeping communities healthy economically. And we're very proud of our participation in that. From our career standpoint, we're very proud to work with WISPs, helping them do what they do. And I'm pleased to finally be here at a place that not only respects WISP, and my other people I work with, they certainly respect WISP as well. We just think we've found a model and a value standpoint that can be accessible to the vast majority of WISPs out there, not just the select few. So we really appreciate being on here. Thank you, Dennis, and I hope Steve gets his fiber problem sorted out.
Yeah, not a problem. Patrick, thank you very much for being on the show. Before we wrap up, I have a couple of pieces of information for those of you that frequent the show. First off, remember that we do have probably one of the largest, or it is the largest WISP-related show, WISPapalooza, coming up. That is WISPapalooza in Las Vegas, October 10th through the 13th. So what really kind of stinks, I've been telling you guys for several months, but as of July 1st, the pricing on a per person or a per attendee has went up. So you're already missed the best pricing you possibly can. But there is another increase that comes up at the end of this month. So make sure you go ahead and register for this show. Remember, again, October 10th through the 13th. There is a fiber weekend before that, so make sure you take a look at that as well if you wish to attend that. As far as ISP Radio is concerned, we do have several other shows lined up for you. July 13th, which is next week, we're going to have Tassos from RF Elements talking about their symmetrical horn antennas and some of their other products that they have. On the July 20th, we're going to have both Steve Curran and Alex Phillips on the show. Alex Phillips being the president, or the current president of WISPA, and Steve Curran, the current FCC legal counsel with WISPA. And we're going to be talking about very specific things as it relates to Title II and requirements and what to expect as a broadband provider. So a really, really good show with a lot of great information on that particular show. Again, that's July 20th. We also have the WISPA State Coordinator on July 27th, Jimmy Carr. He's going to be coming on talking on how you, as a WISP operator in your state, can either help the state coordinator with state or regional events, help with state legislation, things like that to help you out locally instead of just nationally. WISP has always been focused in a national effort with both lobbyists and FCC consultants. But there are things that happen at the state level, such as right-of-ways, things like that, that is not controlled by the federal government, or at least isn't for us. And we're going to be talking about how you can get active locally with your senators, congressmen, things like that in cities. Again, that's on July 27th with Jimmy Carr, and he, again, is the WISPA state coordinator. And the last one we got up here is actually out August 3rd. Brian Smith with Advance LLC talking. He's actually a radio show sponsor, ISP radio show sponsor, and they are looking to help you find cheaper bandwidth. They're a bandwidth broker. They try to help you find all the bandwidth you can get as inexpensively as you can get it. With that said, it looks like we have all of our questions answered. So with that said...
One last point, Dennis.
Yes, sir.
I do want to give the plug also for WISPA. If you're not a member, you need to be. These are the people that defend what it is you do on a regulatory level and in Congress where possible. If you're not a member of WISPA and you are a WISP, you're not as serious as you need to be. It is the definitive organization made up of your peers. You must be a member of WISPA.
I always sit there and look at it this way is, if you are in a industry and the industry has a trade organization, there is nothing other than a few dollars that would hurt you by joining that. And I guarantee you, every person that I've talked to, every person that I know, whenever you say, was it worth your money, the very first thing they're going to say is yes. I actually read a post it was probably last week, or it could have been earlier this week, and they were talking about that. And a gentleman I know quite well, he said, I put it off for about 2 years joining WISPA because, it's a couple $100 a year. That's it. And I thought it was really expensive, and I didn't know what I'd get. He goes, as soon as I joined, within that first month, I knew that every dollar I had spent was well worth it. And that was just in the first month. And he goes, and he wished that he joined 2 years prior whenever he made that first determination of not joining. He knew that he made a mistake 2 years ago, and he wished he had joined. So you definitely need to be. If not, I'm sure we'll see you next week. And we are about out of time. So, Patrick, thank you very, very much for the follow-up. And we're
Thank the audience.
Yep. Thank you, everybody, for coming here. And I hope to see you next week.
Thank you for listening to ISP Radio. We hope you've gained new insights and additional wisdom in our industry as well as your business. Please remember to visit our show sponsors via the links on ispradio.com. If you're interested in becoming a show sponsor, contact us at sales@ispradio.com. Now go out there and push those packets as fast as you can. Good luck and Godspeed.